Hello, and welcome to another episode of A Matter of Trust. I'm Patrick, and my co-host is Jeshua.
What's
Today's
up?
today's topic is listening, and there are several angles to that. But maybe I could just open this by asking, who are you listening to?
Mhm. Yes, that's a good question to ask each and everyone that you are around, because it really also is a expression of your certainty in yourself. Because whoever has your ear and you're listening to has a part of your paradigm and creates a big part of your paradigm, which I'm also thinking we can touch a little bit into later in the later questions. But it's good to be aware of who exactly is the one you listen to, because if you're just listening to everyone around you, you're not really creating your own life and acting as a conscious creator. You're actually just copying and pasting everything that you hear around you. There's no creativity about that. So it's important to notice that. And if I should have to put like a personal note on that, who I listen to, I listen to, well, the thing I listen to is always going the most high that I'm able to in each and every moment. So that means that I will always listen to my higher self, which I see as God, the universe, or the purple monkey dishwasher. Um, and always listen to that entity, because then I know I always am listening to and acting in alignment with my highest of potential and my highest of self and expression, which is my purpose. So part of it at least.
Hmm.
So who are you listening to?
Yeah, I am. I'm practicing especially listening to myself, or we can say higher self, because yes, there are a lot of inputs all around us all the time from people, media, which is also people, um, and this this listening to the higher self, it really is a great deal, and it is something I focus a lot on now, and also focus on finding out when I can make it easier, or how because I find that even with this knowledge, that yeah, you should listen to yourself. It doesn't mean that it automatically happens. Just because you know that and can say that to people, then it's just sometime I recognize that it happens, and other times it's I just go, because if I'm around people, if I'm around a lot is going on, then I will be affected. So I look into methods, and it can be practices. Uh, Spending time on your own, on my own, is definitely an approach. Also, spending time doing very deliberate tasks in very specific environments. It could be a meditation. It can be okay if it's guided. If I decide, you know, who's guiding it and in what direction. Or it could be a yoga practice. I just started with some very gentle yoga to focus on the meditation aspect. Um, so, who am I listening to? I'm not only listening to myself, but it's the most important to listen to. But on the way, on the path to hearing myself or ourselves in general, it can be beneficial to listen to people who master it, who master listening to themselves, and are humble enough to know that they shouldn't try to make people copy them, but they actually want to just help people experience that same joy. of hearing oneself, listening to oneself. So I also listen to some people that I resonate with and seems to master it more than me. Yeah.
That's a very good point, because in the whole life, like the whole span of life, we meet so many different kinds of guides and masters that we learn from, relative to what we actually have to integrate in our exploration of life and the experience of life. So it's a good point, I think, to really listen to, okay, what kind of details and what kind of teachings can I pick from this teacher, and which ones can I kind of let go, because also part of listening is not only just listening and absorbing and integrating, it's also letting go of information that you do not need and do not serve you. um, because it's about listening is about being alignment with yourself and being aligned with your highest potential. So if you don't listen, for example, it can be something about past trauma. Maybe your parents haven't been very good at listening to you when you were speaking as a kid. Um, for example, I'm living with a couple of parents right now that have like a conscious about they have some consciousness about how to listen to a kid, because they're aware that, okay, well, this little person here doesn't speak as well as we do, so the person cannot express themselves clearly, and so we really have to actively listen to this individual, this little person, this little soul, and I think that's a good point that we touched right there, that also listening is also kind of navigating between integrating and letting go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that when you listen to people, you should mind that everybody has like a learning experience, a learning process. So if you have a mentor, for example, be aware that these people also are learning while they're explaining something to you. Like they're not on a pedestal. They're not better than you. They're on a journey, another individual experience. And so it's important to note that they're not above you, and that neither are you above them, except when it comes to your own experience.
Mm-hmm.
If you get what I'm saying, because when we start to think that we are above someone, we kind of lose focus of what we are and who we are. We start to identify ourselves with some kind of mechanism that is egoic and not really in tune with your most highest potential self. And also, if you think lower than your highest potential self, then it's also like an issue. It can be, at least. This is things that I've been thinking about when you ask that question. That it's that balance between knowing that the one you listen to is maybe have some things that you want to learn from them, but also they're on their own journey, so they're still students. They're not these. And I speak from my own experience. These potent gurus that knows everything about your life, because they know a fraction of who you are. And I've seen so many mentors neglecting students that is coming to them because they simply do not bother because of their own ego. And that can be an issue. It can be an issue if you're a teacher, because what you're actually doing is you're navigating with your ego, with identifications of who you deem to be worthy of teachings from you, when in reality you're here to share with each and every one that you can, especially those that come to you and ask specifically for your help. This is the way I see it, at least. This is the way I see it. because there's something ironically about when a student comes to a teacher and asks for a lesson, and the teacher is kind of about it. It's usually actually the best kind of connection that you can build with the student, because this relationship actually creates a strong bond. It creates a strong bond to that side of yourself that is coming in contact with you and attempting to integrate for your highest potential to really flourish and express itself vividly. And yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm. That's a very interesting point. It makes me think of all the people making a living out of helping others. And what if someone asks for help and then they they are rejected because they don't have the money? It's so that is very interesting. I'm
Yeah,
not saying
this is
I'm not saying we should that people should not make a business out of skills and teaching and mentoring, but it's I also recognize what you say about sharing with people. If it's a purpose, if it's really a teaching that you feel called to, then it seems kind of weird to block that purpose because of some material detail. Yeah.
right, because some of these people that come to the teacher and is brave enough to actually confront the teacher and keep on doing that, it's actually also those that will most likely create the greatest results. And if it's really happiness that you want to create in people, and kind of elaborate this feeling in people and their sense of purpose, you should have eye for this. I mean, it's yeah, for me, it seems natural to do that, because if we go back to source, there's no such thing as money, for example. And I totally agree with you. Before I say it, I totally agree with you that, of course, you can make business of it, and it's a good idea. I mean, it's a good thing to do something that you love and get money from it. I mean, why not? Why not? That's why we hear, some people have like a purpose for that, to do that kind of thing. But also, there's the very source of everything. There's the very, very source of it, the expression. And if you feel that someone has like this immense potential, and you're judging them because they have no money and you have a standard, that's just your ego. It's just your ego trying to identify with something that you want to elaborate further. And by doing that, you're actually not expressing that for yourself. Ironically enough, it's ironic. I know it's kind of you can see it as a paradox, or even like a feature of the law of polarity, but it is what it is.
So
I saw the other day that, for example, like a group that I've been very engaged in
mhm.
started to make their own platform, paid platform, and was closing down a group to get people over there. And I think that's fine. That's totally cool in the business sense. That makes sense, of course. And when I read the comments, there was this comment from one of the admins in there saying that they want to split the interested and the committed. And I'm like, huh, who made you the judge of that? I was like, how can one say that? Like, are you committed to my process? Because that's ego. Or are you committed to the process? That's everything. The distinction is very clear, very clear.
Mm.
There's either that, well, commitment. They will probably see commitment as, I'm really willing to invest in this, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But by making that transition, there's also a lot of things that you kind of do not see, because you kind of let your ego take over, and that's what it is. Like we can have our own opinions upon that, and that would also be an ego thing. Um, but essentially, I think, like I just explained, that there's people with deep potential, and they're not necessarily those that dress rich or have the funds immediately to go into these kind of things. They have a very exciting journey in front of them. And I think as a pure teacher, whatever pure means, I think one of the best approaches is to embrace where people are. And if you see potential in a specific student and you're surprised by it, which I've seen many times in my case, and still people are not letting it through, not letting the student through because of this economic barrier, then there's actually, you're forgetting the law of giving, like giving. When you give stuff without minding what you get out of it, you get the most outcome. You get the most income. I was I was watching a podcast today that kind of has something to do with this. I just thought it was funny, but it was a young guy, that is making a podcast, very new in his game, and he's
Mm-hmm.
inviting specific individuals to come to his podcast, and uh, and he's a terrible host, to put it mildly. He's he invited a guy that invited 20 Indians to his studio because this guy knew that okay, well, this young guy has not really got the gist of what it is, and what it is, the whole essence of doing something that you're passionate about is giving people something that they feel is valuable. For example, the young guy said that he made the podcast to get money. You could clearly see that on his content. It was not. He was just. He was being disruptive in a not so listening way. Talking
Mm-hmm.
about listening, and this other guy was more into doing it because he knows what makes people happy is what is going to make him more successful, because that's a greater value than money can ever be. And it's the same thing we see all over society, and which is why that masters of the spiritual art and the connection between the three parts like body, mind, spirit, the father, the mother, and the son, all these kind of things you have, is to really know what's valuable. And now we're talking about listening.
Mm-hmm.
And in this world, there's a lot of people that want to talk a lot. They want to get out to people and talk to people. While talking with a sense of value is actually listening, the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
Because
That's
if you just,
interesting.
yeah, because if you simply talk, well, you kind of lose the value. You kind of, it's clear to conscious people
Mm-hmm.
and aware people that practice observation, the art of observation and listening, that there's no pure intent in it. There's kind of this little gap in between the very thing that you're doing and why you're doing it.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, so talking with value can be listening, or maybe it's because the person has listened so much and cared so much about listening, and then what is being expressed has the value, the weight of the value of all that has been listened to. Well, I was reminded of a little brief story. It was just when I read the biography of Nelson Mandela. He explained that his father was, I think, the right hand of the chief in some tribe village thing, and the whole village is gathered round in a circle. And what happened is the chief and his father, they just sat there while everybody was talking, one by one. Everyone had their turn, and then after everybody had had their turn, they spoke. Maybe firstly they spoke together, but they spoke after that. And I remember that so clearly because it made a switch in me. I was at this school where you stay, folk high school in Denmark. You stay there, you sleep there, and eat there. And I started, after reading that, I just started sitting at the end of the table when we ate and not saying anything, just trying that method of just listening. So yeah, this is, see, we kind of, it intertwines how we listen to others and use it and how we listen to ourselves. Because actually, when we listen to others and give it time, there will be room for listening to oneself between hearing what the other says and replying. So there's room for listening to oneself. So it becomes this, okay, everything can be taken in, and then you hear what is coming through to you based on everything you've taken in. Of course, these are specific situations. And so maybe this brings us to the next question, because it says, what are we listening for and why are we listening? Because, of course, there are context. I can just start by mentioning two different cases, and then maybe I'm sure you can elaborate a bit, because one would be, okay, am I listening to specifically figure something out with another person about a situation, about how to solve a problem, or am I listening to figure out what is my own next step in life, for example? So maybe it's good to be aware of what are we listening for? Why are we listening? Um, have you had some approaches there, uh, like depending on these situations? Or is it basically, is it just the same? I mean, I don't think it's exactly the same, because when you listen to other people, you involve others all the time. But sometimes I guess we have to disconnect and not involve others. So we have to use both. Um,
Yeah, see, there's a culture regarding what you're saying of a lot of people expect an answer when you're talking to them. They expect every little moment of silence to be filled out with some noise. This is what we are used to with our sensory organs, you know. Like, there's not a moment that you don't see anything at all. Like, you may think that if you close your eyes, for example, you don't see nothing, but you see something still. You see black and you see colors also, some do, and there's still things to see. Even though you're not eating anything, you're still tasting. And same thing regards to the inner things, the inner senses, which is like the gross senses, with also the deeper and the more silent end of it, you can say, the other polarity of it. So when you're actually not saying anything, just actively listening, and just staying present, you're also saying something. Because what people say might not be something that you resonate very well with, because you're in the process. I was reading Tao Te Ching the other day, and I still do because it's an amazing book, I realized. And from reading that, it was like a portal opening. And at this portal, you know, had a lot of useful information. and it's dense. It's very energetic. It's very intern. It's not something that you like. The whole concept of Tao is that it's something that you cannot put a name on. It's something untangible, and to stay present with that requires you to be silent with that. So when you're in that and really connecting deeply with that, you're in complete silence, and
Hmm.
you do not respond to anything that you should not respond to.
So for those who don't know, this book is like a little book, maybe with small short sentences to ponder on, like old writings. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. It's a book about the experience of life and how we engage if in different ways. There's both like in a sense of being a king and a ruler and being a businessman, and also being a wise man. There's these different kinds of verbal or scripture that kind of gives the picture of these things. It's a very interesting book if you're into esoterics and really into understanding yourself better and have a feeling that you understand things that others have a bit of difficulty tapping into, which might indicate that you're a teacher here to really show people the way of Tao or the universe or God or whatever, the purple monkey dishwasher, whatever. It's yeah. I just wanted to put that there.
Mm.
Um, so I want to get back to the question
Mhm.
to what we're listening for and why we're listening. So we touched a little bit about why we're listening and what we're listening for already. Um, but and I would say that it's in general, like I when I listen, it's an awareness of my higher self. It's a awareness of that God is always connecting with me and always conveying a message to me. And the more I listen, the more I connect with this, the more I get direction, the more I'm aware of where I'm going, and the more I'm engaged in the adventure of life. In some sense, it can also be good to let go of it because sometimes that's the message. So, and that's actually also one of the things that the Tao Te Ching is talking about. That the wise man is not someone who's fixed on some specific thing, on
Mhm.
one thing, and this is the one thing. The wise man is aware that it changes and it constantly changes, and it's not a static thing. It's not a static thing. Um,
Mm.
which we also see with the same teachers and mentors and coaches, that they have this is the way to do this, either hypnosis or use this kind of method, and you can do whatever you want, like it changes. So there's different aspects that constantly changes, and especially when you're listening to this and you're not the creator of that content, because by listening to that content, you're actually seeking actively. You're listening to and acting, because acting is also listening
Mm.
in a way um, that's in alignment with the kind of information that you're trying to gather. Um, yeah,
Um,
I think I lost the thread there.
yeah, that's all part of the game, you know. And then I automatically was remembering something while you were um, telling this, and which traced us back to something you mentioned, because I talked to a professional the other day, wrote a bit back and forth, and it was a professional helping people, um, yeah, to get the most out of themselves and break down mental blockings and stuff. And then I said, it seems amazing what you do, and I'm interested in asking you, how can you, how do you deal with the fact that a lot of people who could use your help would probably not be able to afford it? I asked the person that question because I figured that if we really, really care about helping others, we would want to have that answer. And he expressed that he was happy to get that question, and I don't know how much he prepared. I mean, how much he'd done it, but he's developing his offers, and seems like he now wants to have something all the time, no matter who people are, what their budget is, what the situation is. He want to be able to say, yes, I will help you, and I can do it in this way. So he's prepared. Um, Obviously, people getting a 1 hour one-on-one session with him, maybe it's not everybody, but he will not give the people a direct rejection. I mean, he will really want to give the people a yes, I will give you something. So it's also about making sure that that's the atmosphere, right? So it's a possibility to have that atmosphere. People can feel if you want to do them well. Because we listen with our bodies too. We feel something is odd, something is off in our body, communication is weird. Yeah, so that was just, I remembered that. I think I got a good response. To anyone who might work in this field or consider how they can serve everybody while only having 24 hours in a day. Don't have to give everybody the same, but we can always give something.
And I think that's also what many do, and it's great to see some of those guys that I mentioned earlier does the same thing, and it's amazing, that you can still give something. I remember one of them I kept asking, and at the end I got like a small audio about exactly what I needed to hear, I think. And that's really valuable. Even though I didn't pay for anything, I just consistently kept reaching out. So there's also that. Definitely. It's worth mentioning now because that these same people that I also mentioned before does that same thing that you're saying. Because I'm not saying what I do to discredit them or anything. This is purely from what I've experienced and from what I've seen as aware and conscious creator, but also a reincarnated conscious creator. So I'm aware of how to act as a teacher in this world with more confidence also. So yeah, definitely. I just wanted to also mention that.
Yeah, that's nice. And also,
because you're doing great, guys. You're doing great.
yeah. Also, regarding commitment, I also like to touch upon that. You mentioned it, and I just want to add that, yeah, others cannot really judge whether we are committed or not. It's not a either or. It's not a 0-1 thing. It's not a on-off. It's more like commitment to various degree. People commit as much as they are willing and able to. And yes, you can separate, you can make categories, but it's hard to know exactly if a person who was following you or looking up to you for years suddenly is your best partner, companion, helper, something, even teacher, so it's really, really hard to say when people bloom. So some people can just commit, like also with a lot of money, and you can do it super fast. But other people commit inside because they are like they are committed to in another way, and it's super hard to judge. And I add this just to make sure that nobody can sit and feel, oh, am I not good enough? Am I not part of the chosen group. Uh, there's no chosen group. People make categories for practical reason, their own business models and so on, but the ability and willingness to commit that each of us are doing, it's perfectly fine. It's enough for now. And then it can change. Then suddenly, boom, you can move faster in other people's eyes, and other times you just need to pull back, take it slower, and people think you're not committed, but inside you know that you're just listening to yourself, following
Right.
your own pace.
Right. Definitely. 100%. I can totally subscribe to that. It's it all goes down to listening to oneself. Like too many people acting a student and being good students often get these rejections, and kind of let themselves be hit by it too much, like kind of giving up, giving in, whatever. And it's important to remember that. That's also why I try to put it that way I did. Right. So we had a little, we were so engaged in a conversation, so we kind of forgot we're using Zoom free. So yeah, um, we're just gonna jump, we're just gonna, we're just gonna jump straight back into it. And I want to touch on something that I mentioned earlier, a little bit about that acting is also a kind of listening, and how observation is also listening. And listening actually is observation on another level of existence. So people often tend to think that listening is by ears, that we listen with our ears, and it's our ears listening. But it's actually the vibrations through our whole body and our whole bone structure and all that. And we have like small vibrational filters in our ear that kind of makes sense to our brain, so it can understand what exactly is happening around you. Like everything we see with our senses is just the brain's best guess of what's happening out there. It's not the real thing. It's the best guess that the brain has for what's happening out there. And so when I talk about that, observation is also listening. It's really tapping into those more subtle levels of sensations of our senses. And in that regard, when we tune into these things, it's actually what we call alignment. It's us aligning with a higher purpose. And that always, when you start to integrate this kind of being and actually start to meditate on this and start to act in a more conscious way in your life, in a aware way, you start to actually also take actions. So you can say that listening is action, also action, because you can easily listen to what someone says, like with your gross senses. But do you really listen? Do you really like with your heart and with your resonance? This actually kind of goes into our next question of how we can truly listen. That how a true listen is, for one example, resonance. And when you resonate with something and integrate something into your system, you start to actually listen because you start to act it out. You start to program your subconscious mind with a new paradigm, and you start to act this paradigm out into life. And yeah. So now we open the next question.
Yeah.
And so
Do you
yeah,
feel it's do you feel it's easier to act when you actually truly listen? Does it also, in your experience, uh, makes it easier to take action? Is actually taking if you take action easily, is that an indicator that were truly listening to something important or significant?
how I see it is like there's timelines. There's ways where your experience kind of splits because you make decisions, and these decisions are like are directed. Your direction of life is directed through your actions. And so you can, for example, sit and have a thought like, I should meditate. There you have like a timeline shift. So you have two realities that you can actually experience there, multiple, but let's just make it simple and say two. You can either choose to meditate or not meditate. And regarding of which way you choose to go, your reality will be very different. So for example, if you were sitting and meditating, you would maybe have like a great insight in yourself. You'd be like, this question I've asked like a million times without any answers, and now it's finally here. If you didn't meditate, you would transition into a different reality where you would kind of just sit and eat Cheetos. I don't know what to do, but you know, that could be one thing that you would do instead. You know, like, and I think that's important to direct with listening, because there comes specific information in when you sit with silence, because there cannot be absolutely nothing. There's always something happening inside you, always something trying to create, and always something acting out in some way. It's your ability to navigate that really puts that dot over the I in terms of being a conscious creator. Yeah, and I touched a little bit on resonance, because this is one of the fields that I listen with. So I kind of the way I do, I have like a very concrete exercise that I do.
Mm-hmm.
So when I have like a decision to make, I kind of see, okay, well, there's a couple of ways here to go about it. I can either do it or I cannot do it. So there's two ways about it, or will not, I won't do it. Anyways, so then I sit and then I just ask myself, okay, if I do this, what will come out of this? What will the life look like? What will I feel like? Then I engage in all these kind of sensations and visualizations and interactions with a potential future self in some regards. And then I just see that. I don't engage, I just see it at this point. And I'm like, okay, that's one way. Now I just tune back to being here. Okay, so what if I won't do it or don't do it? Then I go that direction, do the same thing. I feel the thing, I see the thing, and I just experience that whole thing. Then I go back to the present and be like, okay, so now I've seen two possible options. What felt the best? What gave the best results? And what kind of life do I wish to live? And this is both a very simple exercise to do, but it's also extremely hard, because it requires you to actually, when you feel that thing that you would absolutely love to experience, you have to do it. I mean, you just have to do it, because if you don't, you know what the other outcome will be, and that's not as great or as splendid as the one that you just imagined. So you'll be disappointed that you didn't do it. So it's a hard exercise to do, because it puts a certain pressure on you, but it's so effective. It's so effective. Yeah.
Also requires postponing. I mean, like, waiting a bit, not jumping straight into it, but you're actually taking your time. There's a bit of a discipline going into that habit, it sounds like to me.
Definitely. And also sometimes you get so you know, at some point you get so good at it. I'm at a point where it happens sometimes, but I just have to actually live into one of the timelines, and then like I have no shred of doubt that I have to do this, you know. And that happens eventually. So you don't have to actually check both sides. You can actually just see, okay, well, this is it. This is what I dream of. This is what I would like to experience, you know, and just go straight into that. And that happens when you kind of build up your intuition and build this listening, not only to yourself, but also to what others are saying, because essentially we're all the same. So so when people are talking, they're trying to also convey something to you that is a part of yourself. It can either be a part of yourself that you're trying to distance yourself from. If someone talks a lot and is talking from like an old paradigm that is trying to convince you to stay in that paradigm, there's also the paradigms that is trying to evolve you and trying to move you forward. And you know, so it's a good thing to always listen to people, even though it might be completely in your perspective a nut job or whatever you want to call people that do not really resonate with you and the kind of things they're saying. Yeah.
And I also experience that sometimes something just feels right.
Right.
And that's, I think most people have. Maybe some people might not remember the last time, but I bet we all experience that. Maybe especially, I don't know, as when we're playful or can not worrying a lot. Um, yeah, things just sometimes feel right. And when we are in doubt, then it might be good to have methods like the one you mentioned. And I'm sure there are different approaches and things to do. But yeah.
100%, and an important fact to also kind of realize in talking about this, because it's essentially like your inner voice. So one thing to realize is that when you listen, you should be aware that when it is your highest self, because it can also be the ego trying to pin you down. And it's very easy to distinguish the difference if someone is wondering about that. So the way to easily remember this and easily listen to your highest self at all times and be aware when it's not your highest self conveying through you, it's listening to what that energy actually says. So if it says you shouldn't do this, oh, don't eat that cake, don't go into that relationship or something like that, you can clearly hear that it's a restrictive thing. Because it's not exclusively bad to eat cake. It's not exclusively bad to not go into a relationship. I mean, both things in a relative situation can be a bad thing or a good thing. It's independent, but you have to listen to if it's a restrictive thought or restrictive energy. If it's something trying to not elaborate further on your full potential, then you should clearly state to yourself, to your mind, to the whole universe that you're existing, that this is not actually my highest self, because this specific message doesn't convey my highest potential. It doesn't tell me that I'm this magnificent being that I am. It doesn't convey the real messages that I'm here to actually give to people and express. So you can easily listen to that and see that, okay, well, when it's saying that, of course you can do it. Of course I need to do this. I get to do this. I'm blessed with all of this, Then it's your highest potential self always guiding you towards creating a better mindset around how you want to live and what you have to think to kind of get to where you want to be and these kind of things. So that's a good point, because if you listen to those things that are kind of neglected of this potential, it's your ego trying to put doubt and restrictions on your mind, and your purpose as your full potential self is breaking free from these chains that the ego is making boundaries around your reality, your perception and experience.
And how would you describe if the higher self, if your higher self gave you a sentence in your head, like a non-restrictive sentence? I mean, how would it speak to you, for example? I know you
Right.
talk about feeling it in the body, but just also if it's words inside.
Right. So for me, it could be like a good example, a positive example when it's the highest self speaking to me. It's like, of course, you should go do that, because this is making you more free. This is exclaiming to the universe that I'm a free individual and I'm independent from whatever. Could be one example in my situation, because one of my two of my greatest values is independence and freedom. So this would be one example, you know, because essentially it's about knowing your values. When you know your values, you can kind of see, okay, if what I get in, if what I hear with my senses is something that is in alignment with those values that I have, then it's easy to navigate. So, you know, when I say as I do, as simplistic as I do, it's also with background of putting work into actually defining these things. So when you can't define, for example, your values, for example, what you love to do, for example, what you love to give, what you love to get, these kind of things, you can also easily tune into, okay, what exactly is my higher self? Because you can think, for example, that that's something that says that, oh, you shouldn't smoke that cigarette would be you know, the opposite around. So you should smoke that cigarette could be the bad guy, but it could actually be the good guy, because it's not like cigarettes, for example, is not exclusively bad, not at all. Like I uh, I know a very talented psychic that smokes like a hell of a lot each and every day, and not like normal tobacco. This is like a big, big mofos, you know. And she just sits and smokes this, and she has done that for 80 years, you know. And she's the most amazing psychic that I've ever heard of. So you know, it's not exclusively bad. It's all about the relativeness. So it's really hard to specifically say, because again, you have to do the work yourself. And I cannot give like that specific answer, because if I gave you some specific answer, you would not go on adventure, and I want you to adventure the hell out of your life, you know. So yeah, I would kind of say that to that question.
Mm-hmm. It's also yeah, while I mean we're talking here not to replace people's own talks, but as an inspiration and a discovery and exploration. Yeah. So always, yeah, mainly listen to yourself. We are also not people knowing better, but we are both very curious, and we have done personal experiments and research, and are just staying curious in our lives, and we have also practiced talking about it and thinking about it, which is why this is possible. And and I know not everybody talk about it, or think that much about it or study it. So yeah, experiment with your own life, but of course it's we give our version. It's not a truth, absolute truth, but it's still experience, and I know from personal experience that hearing others answer questions that I might have, or that I didn't know I have. Sorry about that.
I couldn't hear anything, so I think it's good.
Okay, that was a noise here. There's a noise. You don't hear it. Okay. Where was I? Yeah. We just don't have the absolute truth, but we are answering questions, because sometimes other people will phrase the questions that we would actually like to hear talked about. Okay, there was a phone ringing, distracted me a bit. I think that was how we can know that we truly listen.
Also have a certain sense of skepticism when you listen to someone. Doesn't matter who it is. If it's your best friend, your mother, your child, your mentor that has all the results that you want in your goddamn life, be sure to have some skepticism about whatever you listen to. Because if you don't, you're just falling straight into a kind of a trap that other people has the way, and no one has the way. It's everyone has their own way, because there's one way and that's your way. So skepticism to some degree is very, of course, not like an unhealthy level of skepticism where you doubt everything. That can also be unhealthy for your mental state and your ability to navigate healthily and adapt to new situations and evolve yourself. But a
Mm.
skepticism where you actually have eye for what do I truly believe? What is my experience? What am I craving to experience? Because you could listen to someone that says that certain things are bad for you, but you haven't tried them. So how would you know? How would you exactly know that this thing is not like God's gift to you? It might be. Like again, the example from before with the psychic. I mean, if she stopped smoking, she would probably not be able to do whatever she does. And she's goddamn good at it. I mean, so
It's
you just have to mind that this skepticism is a healthy thing to have in it, and actually a necessity if you want to listen, because yeah,
because
yeah, just continue.
there's so much coming to us that we have to have our own filter, create our own filter.
Yeah,
And yeah, I think it's a good example with the cigarettes. Of course, it, I mean, when health professionals give advice about something that can benefit our life in the choice of lifestyle, there are guidelines, and people would often categorize cigarettes, but it's good to remember that it's not an absolute. It's just if we don't have our own sense of security in about some choice, okay, we can try to listen to someone and try what they suggest. But if we know with ourselves that, hey, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna have this cigarette, and I'm aware what it is I'm doing, so and I'm still gonna do it, and then we don't complain about it. Uh, I mean, then who's to take that away from you? I mean,
right.
it's
And
that's a thing. It's just yeah, it's good that you mentioned it, I think.
definitely, and I will also say that there is one absolute, but the funny thing about that is that one absolute is that there's no absolute, which is exactly what you mean. Because again, like when we think about Tao, for example, it's just that always change and always be aware of this change that the world is making, and always, but it always stays the same. It's also saying. So it's like the source of everything doesn't change because it doesn't need change. It's complete. It's itself. It's complete in itself. It has everything. It doesn't need anything. It doesn't have any desires. And yeah, when we kind of get that there is this one source that is the absolute, and that this one source has many different absolutes, then we realize there's no absolute thing, which is what we're talking about. I just wanted to mention that because it's
Mm.
not like there's no absolute at all. There's one absolute, and that one absolute has no absolute.
That's it. It can also yeah, it can get very deep and also philosophical, and I probably recommend probably it would be nice for people to pick up that book you've been referring to if they want to go deeper with these thoughts also. I would say it's been a
Right.
while since I looked into it, but I remember it stirred something deep inside me that felt good. I mean, it felt good that it was stirred. Um, yeah, and I don't know if we're going to touch upon something about natural laws of the universe. Um, but several places I also heard reference to that, so maybe we dive into that later episodes.
Right. I mean, there is the law of correspondence. If you want to mention anything about the we take the Hermetic principles. There's the law of correspondence that it would be um, suited well into this. Like because you get what you you get what you're resonant with. And being resonant with something, as I mentioned before, is also listening. So when you're in a state, Neville Goddard talked about the assumption of the feeling of the success already achieved. That is like listening to that part of yourself and actually channeling that part of yourself, that is that expression that you seek. So, and that's the law of correspondence for some of you. And you can also go and check up on that. It's not something that I know a lot about, these somatic principles. I haven't studied it too much. I just know them like vaguely. So, but anyways.
Yeah. And then I wonder, you probably indirectly touch upon this too, but can we listen too much? And I was thinking that if it's without action, probably something is, yeah, is listening enough, or can we listen too much, or what?
Yeah. So yes, we can listen too much. Like depending on how you wish to live your life, for example, you can sit all day for many years and sit and meditate and just be in a meditation and listening by your inner senses, your most inner self, and really dive deep into yourself. At some point, you would want to get up and go out and do whatever you want. Just do something when you have clarity about, okay, I just need to go work in a grocery shop. I don't know. It might be different things, you know. It goes back to what Buddha said. I think I mentioned that on the podcast earlier, actually. The same story that Buddha was asked what he actually what do you do after you're enlightened, and what he said is, before you're enlightened, you go to the stream, you take the bucket, you go to the stream, you fetch water, and you go back. After enlightenment, you pick up the bucket, you go to the stream, fetch up water, and you go back. So yeah, I thought that was a fun example to put in here. Because it's essentially that, you know, like yeah, I would shut them down and say, yes, of course you can listen too much. We touched on that a lot already this podcast. I think we already crossed in all the questions actually. But when we listen too much, it's a reflection that you're not authentic with yourself. It's what it is. So when you listen enough, when you listen to that degree where you can feel that's it, then you know that you have listened well. Because you kind of know when the limit goes and what to listen to, what not to listen to. That means that you're more aligned with yourself. It's an expression now. So when you listen too much, it's because there's something about yourself, something about your ability, something about that individual who you are that doesn't sit well with your being. Like you do not believe in yourself, in other words. You do not believe in what you can actually achieve. You do not believe in the magnificence of you.
So that would maybe happen or express itself by not by lack of action. So if you go about and listening to this and listening to this and that and checking the next thing on YouTube or Spotify or the next social media post and just kind of looking for something there to but yeah, also as you said, meditation, even listening inward. Yeah, so it's good, I think, to be aware that action is a good indicator. The urge to take action is actually a good indicator that we have listened enough, and if we don't take action, then yeah, probably something else is going on.
It's as simple as if you listen and understand, then you act. If you can listen and don't understand, then you don't act.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not something that you as your whole being has accepted as truth yet. This is also part of the micromanaging thing that I've mentioned. That like you can listen to something and you might know, okay, well, I have this bad habit of drinking soda each and every day, for example. No, it's a bad thing because at this point it's not suiting my health. But you might not act on it immediately. You listened, but you didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
But when you listen and you get to that point where you understand, then there's no other way than to act on it because you understand. Your being is completely aligned with that way of being.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just normal. It's just a new paradigm. It's your new reality that you live in, that you have worked on to create.
I think that's a valuable little extra to bring into this. That some things that can seem hard, let's can actually turn normal and easy. Let's say if you really wanted to let go of drinking sodas, can seem very hard. It can also seem very easy, and that's I think that's linked to exactly what you described there. Sometimes it just sinks in. I heard stories. Of course, I heard many people talk about it was hard quitting something and they really wanted to, but I also heard these stories, and those I love to remember, where people just say, "Oh, I quit from one day to the other. It was just time. It was just that time." You know, it was fully it was not just a little mental trick in their brain. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was mainly in their brain, but the thing is, it was all of them. It was just the right path. It was their path. So yeah, and that's good to remember. Um, that whatever can seem hard, be prepared because suddenly it can seem very easy. Be prepared for that.
100%, 100%. And it's an easy way and a manageable way to do it. And I would say that this is essentially what happens, that people have such a strong conviction that at some point it's inevitable to act on it. Simply inevitable.
Hmm. The question is
Yeah,
what conviction? And these can change.
definitely. And this you compound over time. If you have had a habit of doubting yourself from childhood, for example, and you're like 36 in an apartment and don't know what you want to do with your life, well, you can still make these small changes each and every day. It might take some time because you have gone 36 years without doing anything about this, but it changes at some point. At some point it's just like it's just new normal. It's important to remember. It might seem a long way ahead. It might seem completely, I can handle this, I can't handle it, but just know that you could take like just a small step every day. Just plant that thought. It's like putting a seed in the soil and just watering it every day. You don't have to overwater it because you're going to waterboard and it's going to die. But just water it a little every day. And if you see that sometimes, okay, well, it's summertime, so now it's kind of more dry, so it needs a little bit more water. Get the metaphor. But then you see the plant grow. You keep on watering it. At some point, you have an apple tree. At some point, you have fruit. At some point, it's just what it is. For the apple tree, it doesn't seem like it has ever been not an apple tree. It has always been an apple tree, even when it was like a seed, when it were a sapling. It had the same code in it that said, "I'm an apple tree." Same thing. It's just about watering it every day, giving a little bit of attention, giving a little bit of love.
So it goes with many things in life and also with listening. And then sometimes we take action and it's a little action and we can feel uncertainty, but we can keep This trying to listen and listening, feeling like we're trying and feeling like we're really succeeding in doing it, but just every day. And also the same with action, and they go hand in hand, as we mentioned here. I would say if you have a kind of short answer to what happens if we don't listen and why is it important, I think we already covered it, but do you have something to add on what happens if we don't listen? Just like short, because we're looking into the end of this episode.
Right. It's short, it's missed opportunities. You miss opportunities for growth if you don't listen. You miss the opportunity of living your full self. You miss the opportunity of actually changing into something that is really worthy of your experience. Because it's you. If you don't listen to yourself, I mean, you're just gonna get a shitty ass life. And I can still smile about that because I listen to myself. So, but it's important to notice this and be a little bit scared about it. I think it's good to be a little bit scared about it if you don't listen,
Mhm.
because it cultivates that sense of urgency of listening and how
Mhm.
important it is.
So without judging people's lives and decisions, I think it's fair to say that there's missed opportunities of missing out on actually living the life that we would love to live. That is a risk. That is a risk. We have to wrap it now. I think it was a good note to end on, actually. So thank you for that. This is Joshua. I'm Patrick, and it's a matter of trust.
I want to say one thing before we close this up because I heard a really good quote earlier, so I just want to mention it very fast.
Quick, yeah.
So okay, the lips of wisdom only whispers to the ears of listening. Thank you so much for listening, and see you.
Thank you. Bye.